Hi.
Hey man,
Hey, I didn't come in as a speaker. You gonna do that this time or not?
I don't know. I'm debating. I don't
Okay.
know if it's like intimidating for people or.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. There's Kingram, I think. Ty, right? That's him, right?
I
Yeah.
don't see that setting in here anymore either.
I thought I saw it
Oh, wait,
recently.
here it is.
Yeah, but I guess you're right. You're probably right though. If you want to use your phone to look at your stuff, I'll keep
Okay.
since I'm co-hosting now, I'll keep a track of anyone that wants to speak. Um, Like Ty, you want to speak on this book or just listen to it, just comment on what we say about the book if you haven't read it? I don't know if you want that Meg or whatever, but but
Yeah, I mean, the book was like dense. Like I'm hoping to keep it to like an hour, but we'll see.
yeah. Well, I don't have many.
Like there's so much.
I have a lot. I have some notes that I took up after I read the book, but not while I was reading the book. I highlighted some stuff, obviously, but that's what I based my notes off of. But I don't have a ton of stuff. I don't think so. The book was long, and I wouldn't call it dense per se. Just it wasn't like it was a textbook or anything like that. It was just long in my opinion, and a lot of information, a lot of information in there. It wasn't hard to understand, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I don't know, like, I'm curious if he retained all of those play sets, or he must have gone back and reviewed them. All the like X's and O ones that he had in there that were like mapped out.
Hmm.
Those were incredible.
Oh yeah. Oh, you
Um,
mean like reviewed the game footage? Yeah, probably. Yeah, but I doubt he even
yeah,
remembered where it was from that deal. I doubt he remembered that.
right.
But that'd be pretty like, that'd be kind of like a savant style thing, doing that kind of thing. So
Let me share this, which I haven't done yet, and
okay.
then oops. I don't know why it's like been like doing weird stuff for me every time. Share via. It says 9 people coming, but I don't know if everybody. I was like almost tempted to like break it up into 2 different sessions
Okay.
just because I feel like there's so much to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, there's
But I mean, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how far we get. And go ahead, Ty.
G'day, g'day. I hope y'all are having, I'm guessing it is afternoon in America, if that's correct.
Yeah.
I hope y'all are having
yeah,
a good
yeah,
afternoon.
early evening, late afternoon. Yeah.
I just have one question and then I'm going to dip back down to the listener section since I haven't read it. Do you suggest for me to read the book as one? Two, what is the book exactly about? Like a brief synopsis or summary?
I, if I had to like explain it in like 100 words or less, I would say it's about what happens in the space on a basketball floor now that it exists. So he does like a lot of specific talking about like passing, cutting, screening, like the underrated plays. And then he also talks about like, actual real basketball X's and O's. It's a ton of stuff. I think it's great. I think it's a really good book. There was somebody who posted that it's like in their like triumvirate of books about pace and space basketball. That's just like, you know, a necessary read to really understand the way that the game has evolved into what it is now.
I didn't think it was going to be what it was, and it was surprising and great the way it was because I thought it was more one of those analytics type books, like a book about percentages and advanced stats and player movement and player tracking, body tracking, whatever, that kind of stuff. That kind of was like sprinkled in there. It was started out kind of that way, talking about the 3 point line and how that revolutionizes sport. 24-second shot clock revolutionizes sport as well. But it's I'd say majority is like X's and O's, and then also how players shoot, how they dribble, how they gather and take 2 steps before they have to do something with the ball, and the Euro step and the step back and detailed X's and O's as well. Like he does a whole chapter where he has these little sidebars about different X's and O's, defensive coverages, and so it's a really good like it's great for me because I'm like a YouTube video that has a bunch of X's and O's breakdown. I don't digest that as well as I do words that I read. So I know most people like those YouTube videos more than words, but I like words more than YouTube videos for some reason. So this was surprising to me and like it was awesome. I didn't expect it, but it was great. I guess I didn't know what the book was about before I read it, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And Ty, if you ever read the other books in this field, this book reads so much easier to me. All of them have liner notes that are like ultra small, and it's hard to like expand and read them at a bigger typeface. But it's like for whatever reason, the way he writes makes so much more sense to me. And like John was saying, he gives historical context on like pivotal games in NBA history. That sets up the era that we do now, where it's like spread out offenses and people shooting threes. And then he writes down strategies used by these teams in pivotal games in their series and how they were used and how teams countered them later on in series like a season or two later. It's incredible. So I recommend it, and it's not like too heady. I don't think. Um, Unlike what's his face's book? Help me out. Your book
Mid-range
that you.
theory, was that the
Yeah, I
one?
thought mid-range theory in some cases just was super academic to me, and a lot of formulas where that's where I get lost. And John, I don't know, it wouldn't be surprised me since you're good at math that you probably tried some of these formulas out. I would just skip through them and like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to do this formula. You know what I mean? I'm going to leave that for the internet folks and folks like John that are good at math. And I'm no slouch at math, but I'm not at that level. And but this book, yeah, for whatever reason, like John said, it makes so much sense, and I recommend it out of all of them. Like Thinking Basketball, which came years prior, again, also read like a thesis. Super interesting, but yeah, it's like holy cow. I can't keep track of all the stats that you're saying. Whereas this, it gives a nice little timeline of how the NBA came to be, as far as how the offenses are run, and then also counters to them. But I'm only at a certain percentage right now, so I haven't finished the whole book. But what I'm reading so far, I absolutely love.
So then my next question is, how much is this book? Because I'm not trying to pay too much.
I think it was like $15 on the Kindle. I don't know, that's a guess. I don't remember what I paid for it. But I'm sure you can check it out of a library too. It might be harder over there. I don't know if books like release at different times or if it's, digitally you can get stuff the same or what have you. But yeah, I think it was definitely worth the read. I mean, for us, this is our sixth book that John and I have read. And to me, they're like building on each other. Like even the ones that are just storytelling have some element of like coaching or X's and O's or old school analytics that is relevant to like parts of the other books. So it's a cool journey in my opinion. And it just informs my viewership of basketball and hopefully increases my enjoyment of it. We'll see if that's true or not with this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it interesting because usually in the past I've checked out when the Kings have been just inept, right? Like I've always felt like teams should earn my viewing time. They're still my favorite team, but I'm not going to devote 3 hours a night to a sorry ass team, if that makes sense. Whereas now I find myself, since I know more about basketball, now at least I know why they're sorry or why they're losing. And yeah, like you said, you find you're into the game more, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm reading it this too specifically. I was like, oh my God, the Kings are playing like the basketball of now. Like we're not trying to play old school. Like I just felt like the last few years, the Luke Walton era was it never got where it was trying to go. Like it was just standing around. It was, a lot of kind of boring pick and roll with outside actions. Like, and so I just watched the players. I didn't watch the plays as much. Whereas, like, I feel with Mike Brown's system, like this book definitely talks about the point five, the read and react, the flex plays, the off action screening, like all of that stuff. I felt like, oh my God, this is modern shit that we actually get to watch now, which is so fun. So, hopefully it continues to be successful. I think that obviously adds to the enjoyment part of it. But yeah, I mean, it just like I felt lucky to be reading this at a time when we have a coach who's also kind of on the cutting edge of it. Um, and I happened to listen to so the author of the mid range theory has a podcast, and I happened to listen to it when I was walking my dogs today, and it's about what is different this year in the NBA, like what refs are calling, what actions, that they're seeing. And it was with Bowser to Bowser that John had on his podcast. So it was, oh God, whoa. Um, it was, well, it's in this thread. I don't have to go into all the exact details of it, but it was super interesting because they mentioned the Kings several times. And that felt so edifying because I don't feel like we've ever really been on the cutting edge of much since Rick Edelman left, right? Aside from individual play kind of stuff. So,
And you've read that thread where Kerr admitted that he totally stole from Adelman. So yeah, you could say that Adelman was kind of the forefather of what the Warriors did, which is totally highlighted in this book, right? That the Warriors started
yeah.
and the Rockets started this whole new era. But then back to the Kings, though, I was really worried about Sabonis since he is technically an old school center where he didn't shoot outside. His biggest strength was passing. It does bother me that he doesn't demand double coverage most times in the post. So that's still a little worrying because it would be nice to have another person that could demand a double team besides Fox, who doesn't necessarily demand it either. Like, I don't know, I felt like a big wing, a bigger wing like Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum can totally not necessarily clamp him, but give him fits. So that's where it gets interesting. I do have my concerns about the Kings as far as personnel sometimes. But as far as the style and of the offense and how it's run, yeah, that's where it gets exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Anyone who's read the book who wants to comment, totally welcome to request to speak and come up. I think I'm going to open my thread. I just have it organized chronologically, so it helps me stay on track. But since I'm down in a thread hole, just interrupt me whenever you want to comment or elaborate on anything that's in it. Uh, Let me open up my doc here. And yeah, so he just starts with like the all the history involved in like basically getting us where we are, all the pivotal rule changes, the inclusion of the ABA, those rules, and then I knew that about the Rudy Tomjanovich getting punched out. I remember when that happened, but I didn't realize that was part of the argument for like having a less violent basketball game. So I thought that was kind of an interesting and weird historical note that he put in there. Um, and sorry, I lost my place, of course. Um, and then I just wanted to comment too. Like I really appreciated his writing that he uses so many different like terms. Like he calls basketball at one point a romance, a dance, a mystery, a narrative, storytelling. So I thought that was really cool. And I think we're always trying to find how to describe the telepathic shit and the harmony of watching good basketball, and it's hard to find good words for that.
Can I stick with telepathic shit? I just
Yeah.
love that.
No, I
Um,
mean that works for
I only
sure.
want to add that I feel like I wish Seth Partnell and Mike Prada actually got together and just wrote one big old book, and he just let Mike Prada write. Whereas I love the intel from Mid Range Theory, but
Yeah.
like the way Mike Prada writes is like, oh, it's so good. Like it's
Yeah,
more engaging in my opinion, if that makes
well, and
sense.
it definitely followed more of like a through line. I think the one thing about the mid range theory, I actually really enjoyed the mid range theory because I like numbers. I like processing numbers and fucking with them after I hear that. You know what I mean?
So
But
were you
it
dealing with
was
the
disjointed
equations as
sometimes.
well?
I wasn't going that far down, but I did. That's what like inspired me, like charting out like the percentages of salaries and stuff like that because he makes the point that you should always be knowledgeable about how you're using your cap, right? And the best way to do that is to understand what percentage of your money you're using on whom and whether you think that's a value add. So he more of like a general sense, I would say. I didn't do his formulas, but I did do some of his general like thought processes on how to evaluate a team, especially on the Kings, obviously. And I
John,
mean,
did
most
you run the formulas? I'm sorry, Meg.
no, that's fine.
I don't think so. I don't think maybe I did. I'm not sure exactly which ones you're referring to, actually, but I don't think I did it myself. I don't think I did. No.
And then, actually, I think I'm going to go with Ty. I'm hungry, I haven't eaten dinner, but yeah, I almost wish like Part Now and Prada got together, but then kept the graphics from Kirk's Goldsberry. Like,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, like you said, this is an incredible journey if you read these books in sequence. I don't know. Did you read Thinking Basketball? Did you cover that already?
We haven't read that one yet. Yeah,
That's
that's on my list.
that's a thesis. You know what I mean? And but I'm so glad I read them all. And I'm reading Spaced Out now, and yeah, it's just nice to get a little picture of the history of the NBA as far as how the offenses are run and how they came to be. So
Yeah, for sure. I
fantastic.
agree.
Let me give a little bit of a criticism. It's kind of lighthearted, but of this book, and that's it's a lot of nonfiction books that have chapter names. They don't have just like chapter one, chapter two, chapter three, chapter four. They got chapter names. It's like you read the chapter name before you read the chapter, and you're like, what the hell is this going to be about? Like, like the positional revolution. I guess you could kind of understand what that means. The positional revolution, but like Schrodinger's superstar, the legal pyramid scheme, subatomic shifts, scan less, see more. It's like, all right, I guess I'll figure out what that means 20 pages into this chapter, and you do, and it's like a revelation to you. It's like, oh wow, I know what it means now. And it's like, it's funny, but I think a lot of nonfiction books do that these days. But
Well,
this
the
is one of
amount
those
he
books.
covers in the chapters was pretty impressive to me, and like how far afield he goes out from basketball. Like, I mean, later in the book where he talks about like the learning paradigm, where like if you like where the flight module or whatever, where if you start like basically pro pilots and people who have never flown a plane in this same like module of learning and put them both in there for an hour, they kind of end at the same place. Like that was pretty incredible. Those kind of studies and stuff that he went and like researched, I thought were really interesting. But like it was a lot too. And I'm not sure if like I think partially I'm just having like attention span issues. I feel like Twitter has like ruined my attention span to a certain extent. Um but yeah, I love like uh the my favorite was the learning module chapter, and then I also love the random chapter, like the our
Mm-hmm,
best play is
mm-hmm.
random. Like
Yeah,
that's makes so much sense.
it lines
Uh,
in with what Mike Brown said this season and in the preseason about not having plays, not having pre-scripted plays that they're going to practice and then put on the court because they can't be the best play is random. They say later on in the book because you can't scout random. You can't
Yeah.
plan for random, and that's partially why it works so well for Van Gundy's, was it Van Gundy's Rockets or whatever? Because you can't scout random. So
Yeah, I love that concept, and then like the branching off concept of like chaos, right? Is like the
mhm.
more chaotic. Like there's certain players that I watch that I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what's going on, and I love it. Like I like Keon Ellis is sort of one of them. Like he had this tremendous like clutch time performance in that the G League game yesterday, and I was like, what is happening? Like I don't even know, but it's so cool. Like so, and then part of that, I think he talks about it being like a mystery and a trick, and like things like I don't like watching Jason Williams. I put Jason Williams in my thread because
Hmm.
he talks
Okay.
a lot about like Harden, Hardaway. He talks about um, Allen
Iverson.
Iverson,
Yeah.
obviously. Like Allen Iverson is just the original of all weirdness, right? You're like, what is he doing? Like this is street ball, but it's working, and he's dribbling and he's moving and he's catching people off guard and he's breaking their ankles, and like it was hard to process at first until you knew what was happening with him on the court. And I found Jason Williams to be the same way, where you're like, where is it going? Like I have no clue. Sometimes I wouldn't even understand after he passed the ball where it went. You know what I mean? Until the replay. And to me, that's like the mark of true greatness and true chaos. It's like the riskiness of being incredible, that pays off.
Well, and also being at the forefront of a new style of play that everybody copycats in the NBA. I just love how he covers the different eras
Yeah.
between, Showtime era and then the last dynasty of the hand checking era with Detroit, and then it moves into the Dwayne Wade, LeBron James heliocentric era, and yeah, it's like, oh, just give me more. So
Yeah.
and
It's fun to like go through it once you've lived it. Like I didn't watch all those years of basketball. Some of those years I was having kids, or I wasn't fully tuned in. But I
Hmm.
always believe that basketball is sort of like, I had a Buddhism teacher one time say that Buddhism is like the ship that you take across the river when you need it, but you don't have to know that you don't have to always be in the ship. And that's how basketball has been for me in my life, is like it's always there to go back to when like I need it to save me or get me across something or entertain me. And yeah, so it's fun to like travel that journey even through the stuff that I didn't actually watch. It was like, oh wow, I get that. I see that happened now because I didn't put it together before.
and then also to read it reviewed at such a high level, right? Because when I was
Yeah,
watching basketball 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, my knowledge wasn't online yet. My basketball mind wasn't online. It wasn't there, in the words of J. Kyle Mann. So it's like, so now when I see the game, it's like my nose is wide open. It's like, holy cow, it's like a whole new ball game for me now that I know more, since I've like learned like fivefold in the past 3 years. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
we've seen
totally.
the game for so long, but then it's like it's just kind of in the background. Oh, that was a good dunk. You don't really know what they're doing. And now that he's recapping it, it's like, holy cow, I almost want to watch, Western Conference Finals again. It's fascinating.
Yeah. It's interesting that it like pays off the more you watch it to some respect. Like that it continues to have like deeper and deeper meaning sort of the further you go on like studying film or rewatching things. I mean, that's always the mark of something great to me
Yeah, one thing,
too.
I'm gonna head out, but I liked how he talked about LeBron James and how Boston kind of just developed this defense called the strong side zone to counter LeBron's abilities on offense, and it was just so interesting, and how that's why LeBron went to Miami.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, wait a second, they have this defense that totally crowds me, and I can't see or make a play from the floor because they're double teaming me, and I need help, and then that's why he bounced, right? And
yeah,
it's like, oh, snap. And like, we know, it's like, oh, we always thought, oh, he's just being selfish. Or it's like, oh, look at me. I'm making a move. I'm taking my talents to Miami Beach. But then you kind of read why, and I could see the frustration, and you know how much of a competitor he is. It's like, yeah, you almost don't blame him. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating for sure. I think he does a really good job in this book too of like giving credit out over like players as innovators, coaches as innovators, and even rule changes that would like spur this kind of innovation. And yeah, it's
Yes.
just a really fun, interesting concept of like the relationship of, sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth, basketball, and how risk taking can pay off so much. And create, I think he calls it downstream effects, right? Like how it's kind of like the butterfly effect, like one action can create so many downstream effects over time. And this has happened to be in a condensed period of time, because of direct rule changes, etc.
I think in mid-range theory, I think he goes on about how we see basketball as it is now, but no one envisioned what it was going to be 20 years ago. So now it has me thinking, well, what the hell does basketball look like 20 years from now?
Yeah, right?
Are people going to be taking like shots from their own key? You know what I mean? And are they going
Yeah.
to have a 4 point rule? And yeah, I think we all know that like Wembanyama is going to change everything. So yeah, it's totally scary. But thank you for allowing me to speak in your space. Thank you for hosting. I'm going to get out.
Thank you,
Thanks,
man.
guys.
Okay, thanks, Daly.
All
Yeah.
right, peace.
So, let me just, so yeah, so I mean, the Holy War, Houston versus Warriors. Um, I read that as being just stylistic primarily, and that the Warriors were adding lots of pick and rolls, lots of off ball screens, lots of extra cutting, um, to achieve a new style, whereas like Houston was just valuing the points value of the three pointer. So their goal was more to foul hunt, was more data driven, I guess. Um, and and then I have pulled a couple quotes. So, what was the defense supposed to do with elite 3 point shooters firing from anywhere on the floor, off any sort of prior sequence, with any combination of players, springing them open via any combination of screens, cuts, and passes? It was a question no other team in NBA history had ever dared to pose. So, that's about the Warriors, obviously. Um, and then he gives so much credit to like all the different coaches over the time period, like Sloan, D'Antoni, Gentry, Nelly, Pop, Brown, Carl Van Gundy, Carlisle, Spo. And I probably left some out that he specifically mentions. But I think it was so great how he talked about like the product on the floor being a synthesis of history, and combining all of these different systems and ideas. Like, instead of just formulating a new one, taking everything that already existed and putting it all out there in the space that was created by the three pointer, you know, was really a beautiful kind of idea to me. Um, and then the Schrodinger superstar one, and the democratization of skills, um, was kind of like where the evolution of skill sets started happening. So, like Pete Carroll said, like to play good basketball, you have to be able to shoot, dribble, and pass, right?
Right.
And I mean, this is really the fruition of that basic premise. I think is that everyone can do that now, not just the guards, not just it's not just the big man posting up. It's not just, but everyone knows all the skills, which is absolutely amazing. Now, obviously, um, hopefully, every team has a star or multiple stars who, create more gravity on defense and who, make up more than he talked about the whole 80-20 thing, which I don't know if I totally followed that well.
Yeah, I
But
didn't.
clearly there's something to that, is that your star should be the majority of your success, right? In one way or another.
Maybe I don't know. It's just hard to believe somehow that 20% of your players equal 80% of your impact. I mean, maybe the whole roster. That make more sense to me, I guess. That what would that be like? I don't know what 20% of 15 is, but
Well, and
um,
also, like, what
three.
about like a heliocentric team, like a team like the
Yeah, Luca.
Mavericks,
Yeah.
or I mean, Atlanta's maybe less heliocentric this year, but then it really makes sense. But really, what I want to see when I watch basketball is the 2002 Kings. It's team basketball. It's the harmony. No, okay, so he has this quote: "The beauty of basketball, especially at the highest levels, is that its style contains multitudes and its players need to collaborate to become more than the sum of their parts. One plus
Okay.
one doesn't always equal two. Sometimes it equals less, and sometimes it equals much, much more. Just ask any team who has paired multiple superstars." So I guess I would argue that for me, when I watch it and I see that beauty, it's not because of superstars, it's because of like the harmony and the collaboration that's happening among all of the team members, you know? Um,
I think you can build this. You can tie this a little bit to what he talks about later. Or was it earlier? He talks about creating advantages. You have setup, you have advantage creation, you have advantage exploitation, and your stars, whatever they're doing, whatever they do, they can create advantages for you, and either they or their teammates can exploit it. Or, I guess the star would exploit it as well as the teammate that actually scores the basketball. But it's not
yeah,
always necessary for. But the stars are able to do that. The stars are able to accomplish that quicker than just a role player might be able to do so. Create that advantage somehow, whether that's through a screen and roll or through having that shooting gravity of Curry and running around the whole court all over the place that Curry does, and
yeah,
other,
that's
other
an excellent reference point.
yeah, it
Um,
was right before that. It was right before. So maybe it was on the same chapter. I think maybe he said set up advantage creation, advantage exploitation, a possession, create a numbers advantage somehow, and try to score with it. And the stars are better able to do that. I feel like it's probably
yeah.
probably
Well,
true. Yeah.
and even, I mean, look at Kevin Durant, look at De'Aaron Fox. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is unguardable at times. Like
Hmm.
you he has like learned how to navigate, or they used to call like Sean Marion the Matrix. Like he would just find his way somehow that seemed impossible, to the hoop. And yeah, so that's, I mean, even though Sean Marion I don't think was one of their main stars, but he was a big part of that fun Suns team that he does talk about in here quite a bit too. So then he goes on to the positional revolution, and talks a lot about.
Ty has his hand up if you wanted. If you were,
Oh
I don't know if
yeah,
you saw that. Okay, go ahead.
go ahead, Ty.
No, no, no. Go first. Go first. Go first. It's a bit off topic. That's why it has to do with the Kings, but it's off topic.
Oh, well, go ahead.
So I had a question about Rashad Holmes. Right? Do you think like there's a spot for him anymore, or do you think like Mike Brown's just completely given up on him? Since I haven't watched the past two games of the Kings just because of the timing. Both times has been because when the Pelicans are on. But when I've been watching, it just seems he doesn't even bat an eye at Rashad Holmes getting any PT.
Yeah, I it's really hard to say. Like, I don't know. I mean, Rashawn looks really out of sorts, and there's kind of no way around it. And I think like I said, like reading this book, I was like, oh my God, we're playing modern basketball. But like Rashawn's strength is like straight up pick and roll. And we just aren't doing that. Like we're doing the point 0.5, like make a decision in 0.5 seconds, don't give up middle. Um, and read and react. And for whatever reason, like Rashawn is just not there yet. But I don't put it past Mike and the rest of the coaching staff to get him there. I also think that there may be a deal out there for him too. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
John, what's your thoughts on Rashad Holmes?
Jerry Reynolds said that Rashawn Holmes was the best center in the league at switching onto wings, at guarding wings. Not the best wing at guarding wings, but the best center at guarding wings, like switching onto them in a pick and roll when a big wing is running pick and roll to switch onto that guy. So we need that. We could use that. He's not a rim protector in the term, like he's not like obviously a great rim protector, and he's not even really a good rim protector. But he the main problem with Rashawn, I feel like right now, that I can see being just a fan at her watching on TV most of the time, is that he seems to be off emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever you want to describe it as. Something is off internally with him, where he's not providing the same ferocity as what I describe it as. Like Rashawn, if you watch Rashawn in prior years, he was fired up. We gave him MVP chance when he's obviously still a role player. We gave him an MVP chance because he was trying his butt out there, trying the best he could possibly try times 10 out there every game, and that's not happening right now when I see him play. So something's, I don't know if that's because he's been relegated to the bench and then relegated to not even playing. That could be part of it, but I mean, I just hope he kind of can snap out of it. As far as wanting him to play like Sabonis, I disagree with that. I'm not an NBA coach or an NBA player or anything like that, but I think like you should let Rashawn play like Rashawn and have Davion or Monk or whoever run some pick and rolls with him instead of having him hold the ball at the high post and try to pass it like Sabonis does, which he's not going to do. Rashawn is not going to do that. So yeah, I think they should use him right, and something needs to change with his mental or something makeup. Something's going on there that needs to get righted. That's it, and then he should be a serviceable backup center, I think, for our team if that happens. That's all I got.
Interesting. Me personally, I don't think that, like I've said it before, at first it was meant to be a joke. I'm not gonna lie. It was just funny. I was like, okay, this guy was really good last year. He's playing bad. Let's troll on him, right? Since Meg was defending at the start. Now it's just kind of sad. I'm like, oh shit. Like, he's actually bad at basketball right now. He doesn't fit in the system. Even when he does get PT, he looks very lost and he doesn't look happy to play basketball at all. So I just think it's better for the Kings to move on from him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to derail this because this is about the book, so I don't want to derail it too much with Rashawn stuff. But it's hard to know if there's a good deal out there for him because he's not playing well and he's on a whatever $12 million 4-year contract. But I do. He was our heart and soul player. Like he left everything on the floor for us for like 2 years. He had a really horrible year last year, like physically and emotionally, I think. And so I'm rooting for him no matter what. And it doesn't look right now, but like I said, I don't put it past Mike Brown and his staff to get it right. So that's kind of where I'm gonna leave it off, I think. Um, and maybe it feeds into this a little bit. Like the Schrodinger superstar thing is about, you know, basically it's about um, well, actually, let me skip over that part. It's about the positional revolution. Is he doesn't look he's a good switcher. He's an okay drop defender. I think that's been kind of off as well this year. Um, and his offense has been non-existent. So he's not contributing on offense what he's giving away on defense. So eye test, he's a net negative, right? And eye test is usually, in my opinion, more generous than actual data. So, but I mean, basically in the modern NBA, everyone has to be able to do everything, which would mean even, I mean, optimally, you have a center like Draymond who can even in a pinch guard a guard, who can guard all five positions. And obviously, you want to maximize those skill sets. Not everybody has every skill set. And like the way that Milwaukee's on in the background right now. So the way that they've set up their defense and offense around Brooke Lopez is a subject it was a subject in mid-range theory. It's a subject in this book, but I don't know, since he's the second string center, I don't know if you have the same room to do that with your second string, if that makes sense. Like making them all play an entirely different style and setting up a different defense around your backup center, I just don't think that's traditionally done. I don't know if there's time to do that. I don't know if there's time to drill that. I don't know if there's time to practice that. And then it gets really confusing because you're staggering minutes and pulling DeMontis in and out. And DeMontis plays a lot of minutes. I mean, so anyways, yeah. And I mean, again, just to pull it back to the book, so he talks about the positional revolution, and he talks about all different centers being able to dribble and pass, guards being able to post up play, all of these kind of skill sets that we think of as having a positional personality, but that have evolved where, some big men are like Jokic obviously is a passer, is a playmaker, that kind of thing. So but I think one of the important things that he says here, he says, taken separately, each lacked the prototypical skill set for their position. So they lacked it. Together, and only together, they filled every on-court job necessary to succeed. They, in a sense, represented the original positional revolution. So they started trying to fill in a gap, and they did it by finding guys who had, different skill sets than you would think would be normal for their position. So I thought that was really interesting. And I mean, it's another argument basically for fit, right? Is find the guys who fit the rest of your guys. Is you don't need a small forward, you need a rebounder who protects the rim at small forward. You know what I'm saying? Like, so anyways.
Well, I think it's like you need certain stuff to be done. I expressed stuff that was in contradiction to what he said, but what he said makes more sense than what I said. What I said was in the past was, well, if you have positionless players like Jokic, like Giannis, like Luka to a certain extent, if you have positionless players, then maybe you can play positionless basketball. But if you have position type players, you probably need to utilize some positions. That's what I said in the past, essentially. But the book said that's not necessarily the case. Basically, a basketball team has needs. You need someone who's going to distribute the ball, maybe a couple of those guys. You need a rim protector, or maybe two rim protectors. You need someone who can rebound. You need someone who can get offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds. You need someone who can shoot. You need maybe like three or four guys that can shoot. So basically, don't worry about who's taller than whoever else. Who's tall and who's short and blah blah blah. Who's stocky and who's skinny. Just worry about getting those needs met.
Yeah.
And whoever can do them for you, whether they're 6'1" or 6 or 7 foot, put them in that spot to do that for you. And I guess a lot of players probably have been developed that way. If they were tall when they were 12, they were made into a center, and they were developed to develop like a center. But if not, then so players should try to develop all skills and try to use all skills and but teams should try to build around the needs that they have and
Yeah.
fill them with the players that can to try to fit their players or find players that can fill those needs. So it's kind of how I read it, at least for me.
Yeah, and then I the part I thought was super interesting too is when he talks about how like like we always talk about small ball, right? But
Hmm.
small ball doesn't mean the players are small. It means that the skills of small players have been redistributed throughout the rest of the team, basically. It means that because the Warriors are not small, they're bigger than most of the teams that they play. They're just playing with small player skills. If that makes sense. That made a lot more sense to me because I never understood the small ball kind of concept. I
Well,
get it that it,
maybe it was because of Draymond Green, PJ Tucker, and Robert Covington. I guess the Rockets guys and the main
yeah,
Warriors center guy that plays in their death lineup as a center, who's 6'6" or 6'7", plays as their center. Maybe that was like what led to that. But like as I think the book said that Clay is 6'6" or 6'7". Iggy is 6'5". Who else is in their lineup? Harrison Barnes was 6'8". Kevin Durant's actually 7 foot. He says he's 6'10", but he's 7 foot. So I
yeah.
mean, it doesn't
No, I
really.
think that's a good point. It's also maybe the elimination of like that really tall, immobile center. That has definitely changed.
Right, right.
So it's like the one tallest guy. But there is like variations of small ball, which are tall ball, which is like Cleveland right now, and or Toronto, or even the Bucks teams that he talks about, where they try and like really try and go for this like lengthy um, body type, which it didn't work out for the Bucks except for Giannis because they
Mhm.
forgot to like also make sure those guys had skills. They just got long guys, which is like not a great concept. But it's definitely moved to a place where like I would say almost everybody on the basketball floor has this tremendous amount of athleticism, um, or they're being planned around. Um, I'm trying to think if there's even one like big, huge, immobile center in the game right now. And I can't really think of one. I mean, most centers have, even if they've made the jump, they've done like Boogie did and like lost a bunch of weight and gotten a 3-point shot and like worked really hard to be more of a perimeter threat.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. What do you mean by big, huge, and mobile center? I mean, because those you need people to get
Like
rebounds,
Shaq.
people to block shots. Shaq,
Yeah.
okay. Shaq could back down, but Shaq was in an era before the zone defense was allowed,
Yes.
where, as we read in the book, he was able to just back it down a guy, his dude, and there'd be like these bunch of other the 4 or 3 players on the other side of the court outside the 3 point line. They'd have to stick with their man, except for like once Shaq got the ball, one guy could go down and basically pester him and double him immediately, and then
Yeah.
then his man would be open. So that would they can't do that anymore because of the zone defense rules. They can always just double without him having the ball even or
Right. Right.
whenever they want to they can just they can pack the paint or at least 2-9 outside the paint. Get in and out, in and out, in and out of the paint. But yeah.
Okay, so let me try and like speed this up a little because I'm fear
Oh
I'm going
yeah.
to I don't want to like make us sit here for 2 hours. Let's see. So then then the next chapter is the our best play is random, which we kind of already talked about, but just that speed, chaos, not knowing what we're doing is a better plan than having a plan every single time. Um, which is basically the foundation of read and react, is what I read it as.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and then he talks about the John B. McClendon
Hmm.
story, which was absolutely fascinating. That was one of my favorite like side stories. So I did go and find the New York Times or New York, I'm not sure, New York Times article magazine that he was talking about. That's the story of Duke and John McClendon's team playing in secret, and John McClendon's team absolutely beating the crap out of them. And then he gives McClendon credit for inventing the fast break, And McClendon also had his teams um, shoot within 8 seconds, and he accelerated that to 4. So he was the innovator of pace, of fast break, of transition, of full court ball, but he was prevented from participating because of Jim Crow,
Mm-hmm.
which is absolutely fucking tragic, because he was
Mm-hmm.
clearly a brilliant basketball mind.
For sure, yeah.
And um,
Talk, yeah. It was
and I
mentioned by Naismith, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually pulled up. So there, he talks in the book about the biography, which I pulled up, and it's in down further in the thread. So I'd love to read that at some point too. It's a biography of McClendon.
Yeah, sounds good. That'd be good. I like that
Yeah,
for sure.
and then I'm not sure. Like my notes are weird now. So, but I have passing, screening, and cutting as misdirection. So those drag screens, ad lib pin downs, dribble handoffs, give and goes, flare screens, etc. left defenders bewildered and got their stars open threes. Curry mastered the art of giving the ball up and immediately sprinting to get it back along the 3-point line when his defender relaxed. They never gave opponents time to breathe. So that was like about doing a lot of extra off-ball shit to be confusing,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool. The legal pyramid scheme, the pick and roll is an esteemed basketball convention, its evolution and development. So then talks a lot about like, adding pick and rolls on top of pick and rolls, stacking pick and rolls, like how they're like way more casual. Like sometimes you can't even spot them in the modern game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and how screens, I think it's part of too how screens have evolved. So it's not just some dude like knocking the shit out of you. Like Jerry has that saying, like, and if he screened you, you stayed screened. Like that's not a thing anymore. Like it's not an aggressive kind of like big dude, but it happens constantly, and to the extent that players know how to navigate them can be very, very impactful, I would say. And I just pulled this footnote out because he just started like defining all of this stuff, and it was so great. Like the picture stuff that he had, I kind of wanted to like print each of those out and like make it a little reference book of like definitions, to like
Yeah,
kind of
right.
like the Bowser to Bowser thing where it's like a basketball dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he had some really fun footnotes too. And so SLOB is an acronym for sideline out of bounds. Horns is a set that places one guy at the top, 2 players at each elbow, and 2 in each corner. Rub entry refers to Paul's initial cut before catching an inbound pass. Iverson, as noted, refers to Booker's cut. DHO is acronym for dribble handoff. Spain action is a type of pick and roll involving a second on-ball back screen by a different defensive player on the screener's defender. Middle is, the middle of the court. So I thought that was just like, that can all happen in a single play too. And he put it in like that many words as a footnote. You know what I mean? It was like, holy
Mm-hmm.
shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then no wrong answer. So this is where he has all of these definitions. So he has trap, drop, switch, icing, blitzing, showing, hedging. And I think this is where he talked about like the different tall ball options, which didn't fully work out, and then they ended up kind of like filling in with skill sets instead of size.
Yeah. I
Uh,
thought this was kind of like these coverages are for pick and roll. I thought they should be kind of adjusted based on your personnel and the personnel that you're facing. Um,
yeah,
Drew said you pick. He knows more about being on a basketball team than I do. Like you pick one, coaching a basketball team than I do. You pick one, and you kind of train with it and run with it and practice with it, and that's how you kind of are known for. And that's what the Bucks did. The Bucks were drop, even when they changed, they're mostly drop. But
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like it'd be nice as long as you can learn it all and you can adjust to the various personnel on the court. Like maybe the coach can call it out from the sideline if he sees who's on the court and who's on his team and who's on the other team to call it out and say, okay, go into push or go into
yeah.
drop or go into blitz that guy, blitz the point guard here because he's a great shooter and he's not a good passer and blah blah blah. So,
Well,
but
I
I don't
think it
know.
was interesting that he talked about like Jason Kidd as the Bucks coach, not having a plan B, like
Yeah,
having one system and no other system. So obviously, if it's one thing to say like, oh, just know all this stuff and like go out and run it, but these guys are going out there and making 10,000 decisions in a single
right.
game, especially if they're playmakers or you know what I mean, if they're primary ball handlers. Like so I don't know how many schemes you can retain and how many you can commit to like muscle memory and how many you can change just off the bat. But for sure, like Miami does that where they switch up coverages all the time. They switch in and out of
Okay.
zone all the time. But theirs is also like an effort defense. Like it sounds like they just spend tons of time like practicing their asses off. I loved at one point, I didn't put it in here, but he says they have a defensive scheme that looks like you're blowing air into a paper bag, like where they all come around the ball and then they all shoot out to like, and I think Toronto does that too, where they all shoot out to the perimeter players. So it looks
Wow.
like they're like breathing basically, where they're
Right.
um,
The bag is expanding and
yeah,
contracting and yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I gotta see that.
yeah. Um, so so they popularized the evocative. Oh, he's talking about the Miami Heat, that they were so together. They popularized the evocative on the string metaphor, often cited by coaches to illustrate how any one player's movement could cause the other four to shift in tandem. So they talk, I mean, the most basic premise of defense in basketball is make a shape and defend it, right? And that shape should be something around the paint primarily. And then he goes into that whole thing where he talks about how the teams um, that protected the rim and gave up some specific 3-point shots tended to win more games overall than teams that tried to defend every 3-point shot, right?
Hmm.
So, but essentially, it's making a shape or making an area or creating a zone that you say no one's going to pass this. Like he talks about the free throw line extended, how Miami have the free throw line extended as their place that they weren't going to let anybody pass to get into the paint, which negates the need for a rim protector in some cases, etc. Um, so that was kind of where, like, I think it's later on that he talks about the actual defensive schemes where they can be like rim protection based or paint protection based, but they should fit your personnel, right? So I mean that
Hmm.
was kind of like, I feel like that's a theme in this book. Is he also, when he's talking about shooting and shooting confidence, he's more like talking about find what works for you and then make it better, right? Like try and make it faster, try and make it easier, but don't entirely change your shit because of some old um, you know idea about how biomechanics should work or what have you. But to become yourself and have the most confidence, make it your own thing, shooting wise. And then I would think like, team scheme wise as well, like play to your strengths.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let me see. So talks about subatomic. Okay, so then the subatomic shifts. There's over 200 screens set in a modern game, which is that's insane. Flat, drag, flare, and there's infinite iterations to establish maximum chaos. The best screeners are master magicians who trick the defense into believing one story while performing another.
Hmm.
And then that's where he starts talking about like how Chris Paul innovated like the snake
Snake dribbling.
dribble. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the whole time in that part, I was actually thinking about Tyrese more because
Hmm.
Tyrese is such an interesting player and he does so many things that like people say you shouldn't do in basketball. Like he plays passing lanes, he passes incredibly in passing lanes, but that's also how he plays defense. He jumps. He just does so much weird shit and like it works, you know?
Right.
Um, so anyways, so then so developing new roles or so picks, pops, short rolls, speed changes, direction changes, handoffs. They're just infinite like combinations at this point. Some of them are tricks and some of them are actually plays or actually going to be the successful play. And that then he talks about like them taping off the floor, using cutting as misdirection. Um, Modern floor spacing is thus a blend of positioning and motion. Spreading out is necessary, but only to a point. Cutting helps, but only to a point. The only way to achieve the dynamic spacing necessary to run a modern pick and roll is by putting them together. And that's
Hmm.
when playmaking magic happens.
Yeah. I can think of a good play like that that's in spread pick and roll, which would Walton used a lot. But basically, spread pick and roll is when there's a pick and roll, but there's also the three other players are around the court around the 3 point line. So one in each corner and one in the other wing. And basically, the spread pick and roll, they run the pick and roll, and the guys rolling, the ball handlers driving into the paint, and they're attracting attention from other players. So that on the weak side corner, that man sending the weak side corner can cut to the rim. I just saw this today in the Clippers game against who are they playing? The Pacers. This guy Terrence Mann cut from the corner and got a pass and dunked it right there. Based on that pick and roll being
Yeah,
spread. So it's a cut and a pick and a pick together and spreading out together. Work to make that
I feel
possible.
like they used that a couple times in the Stockton game yesterday too. In the clutch
Okay.
time Stockton game where they were having Nemi roll
Uh huh.
into and get dunks. And
Okay.
there was just nobody that could even touch him. Like it was just a done deal once he was standing there. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. So Brendan Nunez wrote today. There's an article that's up on King's Herald too. That was really good. Um, that where he interviewed Luke Laux about De'Aaron's like progression this year. And there's one part of there that they talk about paint efficiency, like getting those paint touches. And then when De'Aaron gets them, like De'Aaron and Ja are the two like best players. Like if they touch the paint, the likelihood of scoring goes like exponentially up after that because they're so effective at either scoring or playmaking out of that drive action, which makes sense because they're the two best, in my opinion, the two best drivers to the basket. It's
Hmm.
just that Ja gets bailed out all the time with foul calls, and De'Aaron doesn't. Um, eh, so scan less, see more, passing, playmaking, court vision, and feel. This is where he talks about the perceptual learning models and chunking information. Um, and then like basically the curve of modern players is like starting at a totally different place than like if you start with LeBron. I think he talks about LeBron and Aaron Holiday or the comparison that he uses where or maybe it's Giannis where Aaron Holiday who's like a short guard is like doing Giannis's most famous Euro step move, from an out of bounds play, like without even thinking about it. So like it's the building of this condensed kind of evolution and it's condensing even more as it moves into the future. Like, whereas different, like 20 years ago, a guard doing something that is 7 foot, I guess you call Giannis a forward, um, is doing as their main move would be unthinkable. But now it's like everybody can do everything, and they do.
Hmm.
And so it's just like the potential for how far the game, I think, like Daly said too at the beginning of the space, like, how far is this going to go? What are we going to be watching in 10 years, 5 years, 20 years?
What I wanted to say about the rule book is what that was related to, I think, is that I would really like to just look at the changes each year or whatever they change the rules and see like, okay, what could this mean? How should the team, my team, exploit that, or change, adapt because of that, or change, stop doing this or start doing that, based on the rules. And it's kind of really a nerdy
Yeah.
way to decide what you're going to do. But
Well, and
I
I
mean,
guess, like, is it always, are the rules? I mean, he sort of makes the point in here, I thought, that the rules are always just trying to catch up and
okay,
like make the game have
close
more
loopholes.
parity for all the players, right? So, like, when they're like saying the points of emphasis are, to try and like start eliminating these non-basketball moves, it's because it's been like egregiously exploited by certain players to the point where the decision makers, whoever they are, think that it's actually interrupting the flow of the game. It's actually interrupting the enjoyment of the game, the entertainment value of the game, right?
Right, 24-second shot clock. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
it's a good
yeah.
example of that.
Um, and he talks about, so okay, just to like save time here, but he talks
Okay.
a lot at the end here about like all these different kind of like, terms that we use in basketball: field, touch, court vision, confidence. I think he gets into sort of like the athleticism versus IQ thing a little bit, in the sense that he talks about like evaluating Luka as a worse athlete than Marvin Bagley, for instance. Like, Luka is a better athlete for the modern NBA because he does basketball moves. Marvin Bagley can jump out of the gym. What does that get you? Or like he talks about um, James Harden's deceleration, right?
Hmm.
Which is a similar thing to like what Allen Iverson used to do with like his stutter step and the complicated dribbling and stuff like that. Is he would like he would break people's defense just with offense and movement. And I think that's what like the changing of velocity, does, is it obtains that advantage like we were talking about, right? So
Hmm.
that is like the new athleticism. And then like the thing about court vision of like he talks a lot about like Magic being able to take a snapshot of the court, right? And then fill in all the details as he's playing. And then also, like, I mean, when you're saying it in words, it sounds like this incredibly long, drawn out process of like evaluate where you are, where your teammate was supposed to be, whether they're going to still be able to get there, and then make the no look pass, right? But it doesn't happen for them in a long, drawn out way. Like Magic did that instantaneously. Like he had faith and he had trust in his teammates that they would be where they were supposed to be. And so he would make the calculation in instance and make that pass. And so to me, that's what basketball IQ is being able to make that split decision that results in an advantage points, or, you know, gets it to the right person, I guess, to create the advantage or the points.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I feel like that is so rooted, the athleticism IQ thing is so rooted in this like weird sort of racial stereotype. It's kind of rooted in a strange, like, there's these weird overtones that, like, Keon Clark is an athlete, but LeBron James has IQ or something like that. And that's just not true. It's a mix of both,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, I mean, a lot of the stuff I just added in, a lot of stuff that I liked. Like I said, I just put Jason Williams in there. I love this quote by Dennis Rodman where he said, and the Iverson stuff, like, I just super geeked out on because he's really one of my favorite players of all time. And he was such like an enigma when he came into the league because the way his coach treated him, the way he was like talked about, and then the cultural impact that he had, like, on the game and on the consumption of the game and on the audience of the game, I think was just so important. But anyway, so Dennis Rodman said Iverson came in here thinking he was Jumanji and it was going to control the whole forest and wilderness, referencing the 1995 film adaptation of the children's book about a magical board game. The word Jumanji translates to many effects in a language native to the Zulu tribe in South Africa. The lesson of the game is that one person's decision can cause all sorts of unintended consequences, many effects, so to speak. Rodman was presciently referring to Iverson himself as that agent of chaos. So I absolutely love that quote because I think the whole book is about being an agent of chaos, right? To a certain extent, it's about, how chaos has kind of been such an advantage in so many ways to this era of changing basketball over time.
Yeah, let me see if I have anything on this. As far as like general things, I guess I should throw in there. I caught the Rogue One reference. I think he's kind of like a sci-fi fan. He put in or maybe it's sci-fi fantasy. He put in a Lord of the Rings reference there a couple times. I feel like, and I caught the Rogue One reference. That was funny. I thought that was unintentional, but apparently it was intentional. His footnote made it clear that it was intentional. Um, so that's pretty much. I guess that's the main thing I want to add. I just love the X's and O's and the actions. The building blocks of X's and O's. A series of actions can become a play. Initial player alignment is a set. We covered that earlier, but I like that part about it. That it was an X's and O's book, really. As the
Yeah,
acknowledgments say, he got an email about like X's and O's book, a basketball X's and O's book. It's like, okay, cool.
it's
That's
really
what
tremendous. Like, I'm not an X's and O's person, so I had trouble like absorbing all of that.
Mhm.
Like, some of it, I think I was. It wasn't like my initial exposure to it, but it was harder for
Yeah.
me to fluidly navigate as some of the other stuff. But I love the idea of being able to look back on it. And it's funny because, like, even Pete Carrill's book, which was pretty much a straightforward narrative and like these weird like pithy quotes, but he has all those like sections in it where he'll say things like, to break a zone defense, shoot over it. Like these really specific like things, and I find myself going back to those things,
Mhm.
to kind of remind myself. I guess the very last couple chapters are the defense chapter. So he talks about footwork. I geeked out on this chapter too, so the entire thing is highlighted. So it's like not really like worth pulling quote, but he talks about hip flexibility, footwork, catch up, body disassociation, getting low, strategic bumping and space suffocation, protecting landing spots, challenging landing spots for threes, picking a side on closeouts, rim protection, rim pressure, paint protection, dribble containment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just I just went to Davion. Like, you can watching film of Davion, like his footwork. He makes mistakes all the time, but his footwork is so good that he just catches up. Like, he's able to switch and catch up really quickly. He has the body disassociation, the hip flexibility. And then Keon actually in, like I said, that Stockton game I was watching in the background last night, but when it got really good, I started watching it. And he had this play where he got so goddamn low and he stole the ball. And like I have never seen a player get that low, but that was absolutely fascinating. So that's totally a tool that he uses. And I love those three players, Davion, KZ, and Keon, because to me they're the biggest agents of chaos and disruption that we have. Um, and they embodied like a lot of what he was talking about in this defensive. I think there's still like a lot of ways to go for defense um, to catch offense still.
Okay.
So that's my favorite thing to watch. But I was also like reading this and thinking like, well, why don't people just do a Euro step to get to a closeout, right? I
Hmm.
mean, like he's talking a lot about how your velocity, it's hard to like slow down when you're trying to get to a closeout quickly and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of innovation that can still happen on the defensive side of the space.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I hope so. I want to see that. I want to see them try to adapt to the rules and try to figure out a way to beat them. The people that any
Yeah,
team, but especially the Kings, obviously, but any team really. See them
yeah,
try to.
and then the epilogue he just talks about Demar and how the mid range is kind of for specialists now, the way the 3-point shot used to be, and it's such an advantage because people aren't guarding it anymore. So I thought that was super interesting too.
Yeah, I thought that was like a nod, not a nod, but it was what the mid range theory was about was that the best players have to live in the mid range, have to make it happen in the mid range because everything else is denied to them, and they have to,
Yeah,
and they're also being denied the mid range, so they got to like make it work somehow, and that's why they're the best, just because they can do it, they can make it work.
yeah,
So yeah,
incredible book. It definitely like expanded my feeble mind. Um, and I'm excited to like watch more basketball post the whole book because I want to see how much, like I feel like my brain is still a mystery to me, even though I'm like 52. But I feel like to what amount I absorb that, I'm not sure, and to what amount I can apply it to what I'm seeing as a spectator, I'm not sure either. Um, but it absolutely like some of it just blew my mind. Like I mean, the combination of like the writing style and the detail oriented nature of how he was tracking all of it, I think was
right,
just really impressive.
right, for sure. It was a great book. I thought it was a great book. I was surprised, like I said, I loved it that the way it turned out to be. It was great.
Yeah. Well,
I
it's
didn't know it
funny.
was that book. It was an
Yeah,
analytics book.
I totally like. I think when we were first discussing it, we were thinking it's like a straight analytics book, right?
Yeah,
But
that's what I
yeah,
thought.
it's
Yeah,
very much X's and O's.
yeah. So, Sam, you've been up for a while. Did you want to say something about the book or what did we talked about?
No, I don't have anything about the book, really. I just like to hear you guys. I thought you guys were going to talk about the Kings. So,
Oh, okay, okay. No, this is mostly about this book. I mean, she talked about Davion and KZ and Keon, but are you a Keegan fan?
oh yeah, I live in Iowa, so I've been a Hawkeye fan my whole life.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a post game space tomorrow, after the Suns game. So make
Yeah,
sure
what?
come if you can. I know it's late.
Yeah, it's gonna be late.
Yeah,
Well,
Monday night too.
yeah, I hate that the Kings play in the West Coast. When they play in the Midwest or the Eastern time zone, it's so much easier to watch the games.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, John, what do you want to read next? Do you have anything on your list? I think like for me, like I have a lot of responsibilities over the holidays that I kind of misjudged like how much cooking and stuff I was gonna have to do. And I'm like, oh
Okay.
shit, I gotta read the book too. But so I was
Yeah.
kind of hoping like for something like a shorter like story type book, but I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Just for next month because we have Christmas and Kings games as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if
Um,
you can. Yeah. Okay. Let me. I was thinking about that Milwaukee Bucks book, but that could be more technical and more not story type book. But the book about how they won the championship, because I think that's how we're going to win the championship if we ever do, is based on not tanking and small market and that kind of thing,
yeah, yeah.
But if that's a serious, like, detailed and blah 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 book, we shouldn't do that, I guess. But
Well, let
what
me
about that? Uh,
let's shut this down and we'll both go look at um like lengths and stuff. There's there's the Giannis book and then there's the athletic one, whatever that one was. And I think
yeah,
was there
built
one
for
more
this.
too?
I don't know. I'm on Amazon right now. I see built for this, which is the athletic book. The Milwaukee Bucks historic run to the 2021 NBA title. Hope that's not just that 1 year though, that one season. Hope that's more than that. But
How
there's a
many
Giannis
pages
book.
does that have?
Yeah, let me look. Let me look. I'm not sure where to find that, but I'll find it pretty quickly here. Okay, here it is. 128 pages in print. I'm not sure if there's pictures in it too. There might be pictures with this athletic book, but
Let's do
yeah,
that one. That sounds super easy, low commitment, and
sure.
interesting. And I think it covers more than just Giannis,
Okay.
which I'm
Uh,
interested in.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Uh, okay. I mean, if that's the only, I mean, if it, I would like to read about, like, from when he was drafted, because, like, he was the pillar of their maybe, like, and they traded for what's his name, their second best player, Middleton. But
right.
I would like to read about a story from when he was drafted, pretty much, to when they won the title, because that's, like, the story of how they built it up. But this looks like it's mostly 2020, 2021, but that's cool. It's
Yeah.
128. It fits in our in trying to make it a little easier this month, this next month. So yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. Cool. 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 All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks for
thanks. Talk
doing
to you
this.
later. Yeah, no problem. I love it. Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
it's fun.
all right.
Ta
Bye.
ta.
Bye.